All right, let's dive into Optimism today.
Yeah.
It's a layer 2 solution for Ethereum,
Right.
and a lot of folks are saying it could be a total game changer.
For sure.
It aims to address the slow transactions and high fees that can sometimes bog down Ethereum.
It's kind of like, when you try to pay for coffee with a $100 bill,
Right.
but you really just need a few bucks.
Yeah.
Optimism wants to give you, so to speak, those smaller bills.
Okay.
So it makes transactions smoother and faster on Ethereum.
I'm following you. But for those of us who might not be crypto experts, what exactly is layer 2? And why should someone interested in Ethereum care about it?
So imagine Ethereum as this highway, and everyone's trying to use it at the same time. It gets jammed.
Right.
Everything slows to a crawl.
Makes sense.
Layer 2 is like building a faster, more efficient road running alongside that main highway,
Okay.
specifically designed for certain types of traffic.
Got it.
Optimism handles these transactions separately from Ethereum, but it still relies on Ethereum's security for that final say.
So it's kind of like an express lane then.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And from what we've seen, Optimism is seeing a lot of action
Sure.
with a significant amount of money locked in and big platforms like Uniswap already on board.
Yeah, that's right. It's attracted over $500 million in total value locked. Essentially, this means people are putting their money where their mouth is.
Right.
And platforms like Uniswap joining the party, it's a strong signal that there's real potential here.
Definitely intrigued. So how does this express lane, how does it actually work? What makes Optimism faster and cheaper than using Ethereum directly?
Okay, so Optimism uses something called optimistic rollups. It's a really clever system where multiple transactions are bundled together off-chain, and then they are submitted to the Ethereum mainnet as a single package deal.
So it's like streamlining the whole process?
Exactly.
It's very smart.
Yeah, less work for Ethereum translates into faster processing and lower fees for everyone using it.
That makes sense. Now, something else that I find interesting is that Optimism is EVM compatible. Forgive me if I'm getting a bit technical here,
That's
but
right.
what does that mean for everyday users? Or even for developers?
It's a massive advantage. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to move all your stuff into a new house,
Okay.
but you realize that your furniture won't fit through the doors
Right.
with Optimism. Everything designed for Ethereum can be moved over easily. Without any major changes,
Oh.
developers can just use their existing tools and code, which makes that transition smooth. And it ultimately attracts more applications to Optimism.
Oh, that's a relief. No need to reinvent the wheel. And speaking of the bigger picture, Optimism is all about decentralization, right? With the Optimism Foundation kind of calling the shots.
Yes, the Optimism Foundation is a key player. They're very focused on community governance, which means that the people who are using and building on Optimism have a say in how things are run.
Right.
It aligns with the whole ethos of decentralization, which is so central to the crypto world, like a democracy for technology. Pretty cool concept.
Yeah.
Now let's talk numbers for a second.
Okay.
Our sources have given us some price metrics to look at. So currently, Optimism is at $2.07 per OP token, with a $2.6 billion market cap and a 24-hour trading volume of 600 for $47.55 million. And the volume to market cap ratio sits at 24.37%. What's your take on all that?
I think that ratio is really eye-catching because it means there's a lot of activity around Optimism, with people actively buying and selling it at a high rate compared to its overall value.
Okay.
This could signal some pretty big swings in price, both up and down.
Hold on. For those of us who didn't, study finance, what do market cap and this ratio actually tell us, like in plain English? And what is this potential for big price swings? What does that mean for someone who might be thinking about, getting involved with Optimism?
Okay, so market cap is basically, it's the total value of all the OP tokens out there.
Right.
It's a way to measure Optimism's overall worth in the market.
Makes sense. Now, this volume to market cap ratio, it compares how much Optimism is being traded to its total value.
Okay.
And a high ratio, like we're seeing right now, it suggests a lot of action,
Right.
which can lead to price swings, which are exciting for some, but can be risky for others.
So a bit of a gamble then. Like, you could win big, but there's also that chance of losing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's crucial to understand both the potential for gains, but also the potential for losses, especially in a market as dynamic as crypto.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Now let's talk about some of those potential wins. What are the price predictions looking like for Optimism, both in the short term and the long term?
Okay, so in the short term, the price is facing a resistance level at $2.30.
Right.
Think of it like a hurdle that the price needs to clear.
Right.
If it does, we could see a surge toward $2.75 or even $3.
And what would drive that kind of jump? Is it just hype, or is there something more substantial behind it?
I think it's more than just hype. Optimism's growing adoption, coupled with the overall positive sentiment we're seeing in the crypto market, these factors could potentially fuel this surge.
Okay, so it's tied to actual growth and not just speculation. That makes sense. What about long game? Where could optimism be in, say, a year or two?
Looking ahead, the sources predict that Optimism could reach a market cap of $10 billion,
Wow.
especially as Ethereum continues to grow and the need for solutions like Optimism becomes even more apparent.
10 billion, that's a huge jump from where it is now.
Yeah.
What would that mean for the average person holding OP?
Reaching a $10 billion market cap
Yeah.
could potentially push the price of OP to $5
Yeah.
or even more in 2024.
So there's definitely a lot of potential upside.
Sure.
But as we said, it's not without its risks. Our sources are very clearly bullish on optimism.
Yes.
And they've outlined 4 key reasons why. The first one being DeFi growth.
Okay.
Can you unpack that for us? What's the connection between optimism and this whole DeFi world?
So DeFi, or decentralized finance, it's all about building financial tools and services that are open and accessible to everyone
Okay.
without having to rely on those traditional banks or institutions.
Yeah, right.
Optimism is becoming a really popular platform for these DeFi projects because, as we talked about, it offers faster and cheaper transactions,
Makes sense.
which are absolutely crucial for these applications to work efficiently.
So it's like building a whole financial system on top of Ethereum, but without those bottlenecks, that can slow things down.
Exactly.
I like it.
And as more and more DeFi projects choose Optimism, it creates kind of a snowball effect,
Okay.
attracting more users, more developers,
Yeah.
leading to even more innovation.
It's like this positive feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly.
The second reason they highlight is ecosystem partnerships.
Right.
Can you give us some examples of how Optimism is teaming up with other platforms and what that means for its future?
Sure. So we already mentioned Uniswap,
Yeah.
which is that decentralized exchange that's integrated with Optimism. This partnership led to a significant boost in Uniswap's trading volume because users could suddenly swap tokens more efficiently and cheaply.
Gotcha.
Another great example is Velodrome, which is designed specifically for deep liquidity and low trading fees on Optimism.
Interesting.
These partnerships, they're not just about shaking hands, they're about driving real activity and adoption.
Okay, so it's not just talk, it's actually translating into real-world use.
Exactly.
I like it. The third reason the sources point to is pro-crypto sentiment. What are they saying about the overall mood surrounding crypto, and how does that impact optimism?
Well, there's a growing sense of optimism.
Unintended.
You got it. Both from everyday investors and from those big institutions.
Right.
People are starting to see the real potential of crypto and blockchain technology,
Yeah.
especially for things like DeFi.
Yeah.
And this positive sentiment is creating a tailwind for Optimism because it's positioning itself as a key player in the future of Ethereum.
It's like riding a wave of excitement,
Right.
and optimism is perfectly positioned to catch it.
I like that analogy.
All right, the final reason they give is future-proofing Ethereum. I'm curious to hear your take on this. How does optimism help secure Ethereum's future? And why should anyone care?
Well, as Ethereum becomes more and more popular, it faces challenges like congestion and those high fees.
Right.
These can actually hinder its growth.
Yeah.
Optimism, with its ability to scale transactions and reduce costs,
Right?
it acts like a pressure valve,
Yeah, okay.
relieving some of that strain on the main Ethereum network.
That makes sense.
This makes Ethereum more sustainable and capable of handling that growing demand we're seeing for decentralized applications.
So optimism isn't just a Band-Aid solution. It's more like a long-term strategy for making Ethereum stronger and more adaptable.
Precisely. It's a fundamental building block for a more scalable and robust Ethereum ecosystem, ensuring its relevance and viability for years to come.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part of our deep dive. We've learned how optimism works, explored its potential for growth, and delved into why so many people are excited about it. But as with any new technology, there are also potential risks and challenges that optimism will need to navigate.
Absolutely. And in the next part of our dive, we'll take a more critical look at those potential downsides, explore the competitive landscape of Layer 2 solutions, and discuss what all of this means for someone like you who's considering exploring or even investing in optimism.
So stay tuned, folks. The journey into the world of optimism continues in just a moment.
Welcome back to our deep dive into optimism.
Last time, we kind of laid the groundwork. explaining what optimism is and why there's so much buzz around it. Now I want to get into some more specifics. We touched upon DeFi growth on Optimism. What are some real-world examples of projects that are actually thriving on this platform? Give us the inside scoop.
Yeah, one that really comes to mind is synthetics. It's a platform that lets you create and trade synthetic assets. You can think of it like a mirror, reflecting the value of real-world stuff, like stocks or commodities, or even other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Synthetics actually moved over to Optimism,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw some. Yeah, you're spot on. Velodrome uses this vote escrowed token model, which aligns really well with Optimism's focus on decentralization and community involvement.
Yeah.
So users have a voice, and that's a big draw for a lot of people.
It's like they're building a mini society on top of this technology. It's pretty fascinating.
It is.
We also talked about these big institutional players getting interested in layer 2 solutions. Why are they suddenly paying attention? What's the draw for them?
I think they're realizing that. Ethereum, as great as it is, it has its limitations.
Yeah.
High transaction costs and congestion. These are major roadblocks for institutional investors who, they deal with massive amounts of money.
Right.
Layer 2 solutions like Optimism, they offer a way to kind of bypass those limitations
Right.
and tap into this booming DeFi world.
So they're seeing the potential, but they need a more efficient way to actually get involved. And Optimism provides that bridge.
Precisely. Plus, there's this growing awareness that Layer 2 is absolutely crucial for Ethereum's long-term success. These institutional investors, they're placing bets on the future. And they understand that scalability is going to be key.
It's like investing in the infrastructure. That's going to support future growth.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But let's be realistic for a second. Optimism isn't the only player in this game.
Right.
What are some of the other big names in this Layer 2 space? Who are their main competitors?
One of the main contenders is Arbitrum. It's another optimistic roll-up solution,
Okay.
similar to Optimism in a lot of ways. But it has its own distinct features, and it tends to attract a different set of projects.
So it's like two different flavors of the same ice cream.
That's a good analogy. Both have their strengths. And it'll be interesting to see how they evolve and really how they differentiate themselves from each other.
Yeah, competition's good. Usually pushes everyone to be better.
Absolutely.
Are there any other Layer 2 solutions that we should have on our radar?
Another one that's gaining a lot of traction is ZK Sync. They're actually using a different technology called zero-knowledge rollups, or ZK rollups for short. It's a more complex approach, but it offers some real advantages in terms of security and speed.
Okay, I have to admit that one's always been a bit of a mystery to me. Can you break down ZK rollups in a way that even I can understand?
Imagine a magician showing you a trick.
Okay.
With Ziska rollups, you know that the trick works.
Yeah.
But you don't actually have to see all those behind-the-scenes mechanisms. To be convinced, it uses these cryptographic proofs to ensure that those transactions are valid. It's like a mathematical guarantee.
So it's all about trust, but backed by math.
Yeah!
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
But it sounds like there are some trade-offs. Optimistic rollups are simpler to implement, while Ziska rollups might be more secure and faster in the long run.
You got it. It's this constant balancing act. And actually, the competition between these different approaches, it's really beneficial because it drives innovation and it pushes the boundaries of what's possible with blockchain technology.
So it's like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation.
Exactly. As we move forward, it'll be fascinating to see which solutions emerge as the front runners and how they shape the future of Ethereum.
Now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the potential downsides. Because every technology comes with its own risks, and Optimism is no exception. What are some of the concerns that people have raised about Optimism?
Well, one inherent risk with these optimistic rollups
Right.
is the possibility of fraud.
Okay.
Remember, the system operates on the assumption that most people are acting honestly.
Right.
But what if someone tries to sneak in a fraudulent transaction?
It sounds pretty scary. Isn't that like a major security flaw?
It's definitely a risk, but Optimism does have measures in place to try and address this.
Okay.
There's a challenge period where anyone can actually scrutinize the transactions and raise a red flag if something seems fishy.
So it's kind of like this community watch program where everyone's kind of responsible for keeping things honest.
Precisely. If fraud is detected, there's a process to challenge it and prevent it from being finalized. This helps maintain the integrity of the whole system.
That is reassuring.
Yeah.
Are there any other potential risks that that we should be aware of?
Another one is Optimism's reliance on Ethereum's security.
Right.
If Ethereum were to suffer a major setback, it could potentially impact Optimism as well.
So optimism is only as strong as its foundation in a way.
In a way, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to note that Ethereum has a strong security track record, and there's this vast community that's constantly working to make it even better.
Okay, so the foundation is strong. But it's always good to be aware of those potential vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
And what about the competition we've talked about? Could other Layer 2 solutions eventually outmaneuver optimism?
It's definitely a possibility. This Layer 2 space is evolving incredibly rapidly.
Yeah.
Optimism really needs to stay ahead of the turf.
Right.
They need to keep innovating, attracting new users, attracting those developers.
It's like a race where the finish line keeps moving further and further away.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
But what can they do to stay ahead?
Well, one crucial factor is fostering that strong and supportive community.
Okay.
They need to provide those resources, the tools, the incentives, to really encourage those developers and those projects to build on optimism.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about the people who are using it.
Exactly. A vibrant community is absolutely essential for any platform to truly thrive.
It's like building a city. You need more than just the buildings. You need people who actually want to live there.
Yeah.
And want to contribute to its growth.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. From that exciting potential of optimism to the risks and the challenges that it faces. But before we wrap up this part of our dive, I want to pause for a second and ask you, our listener, what's standing out to you? What aspects of optimism have really piqued your interest? Or what questions are still swirling in your mind? We'll try to address some of those listener questions in the final part of our deep dive into optimism. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into optimism.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered so much ground, from the inner workings of optimism to its potential for growth, its risks, the competition, really its place in this ever-evolving world of blockchain. But now I think it's time to get down to brass tacks. For our listeners who might be thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, but should I actually invest in this thing?
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest red flags or potential pitfalls that someone should be aware of before jumping into optimism?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to remember that crypto, it's volatile.
Yeah.
Prices can swing wildly.
Okay.
There's always a risk of losing money. So never invest more than you can afford to lose.
That's rule number 1 in the crypto handbook. Don't bet the farm.
Exactly. And don't just take our word for it, or anyone else's for that matter.
Yeah.
Do your own research.
Right.
Dig into Optimism's documentation. Check out their community forums. Really try to understand the technology before you even think about putting any money down.
It's like buying a car. You wouldn't just hand over your cash without taking it for a test drive and looking under the hood.
Exactly. And just like buying a car, you need to consider your own individual needs and your own risk tolerance.
Right.
Are you comfortable with those potential ups and downs of a volatile asset like
So
Optimism?
it's about knowing your own limits and not getting caught up in the hype.
Exactly. And finally, remember that the future of any technology, especially in a fast-paced world like blockchain, it's never guaranteed.
Right.
Optimism has a lot going for it, but there are no guarantees.
So it's about being cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I like that. Cautiously optimistic.
I like that. Weigh those potential rewards against the risks. Do your homework and then make an informed decision.
Exactly.
Speaking of risks, we talked about the possibility of fraud with optimistic rollups, and that sounded, a little scary, to be honest. How does optimism actually protect itself from these bad actors who might try to game the system?
So it really comes down to that challenge mechanism that we talked about earlier,
Right.
where anyone can scrutinize those transactions and raise a flag if something seems suspicious.
Okay.
It's a built-in security system where the community itself acts as that watchdog.
So it's a bit like a neighborhood watch then, where everyone is kind of looking out for each other.
Exactly. It's this really collaborative approach that helps keep the system honest and secure.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about optimism's reliance on Ethereum? If Ethereum were to have a major security breach, wouldn't that kind of impact optimism as well? It's like building a house on potentially shaky ground, isn't it?
That's a valid concern. But remember, Ethereum has this proven track record and a vast community that's really dedicated to its security.
Right.
It's constantly evolving and improving.
So the foundation is strong, but it's always good to be aware of those potential vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
We've also talked about the competitive landscape quite a bit,
Right.
and new layer 2 solutions are popping up all the time. What are some of the things that could really make or break Optimism's success in the long run?
Well, I think one crucial factor is going to be innovation.
Okay.
Optimism can't afford to just stand still.
Right.
They need to continuously improve the technology,
Mm.
make it easier for developers to build on it, and of course, attract those new users.
So it's about staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
What else?
Another key is community building.
Yeah.
Optimism needs to cultivate that vibrant and supportive community of developers, users, and projects.
Okay.
That means providing resources, fostering collaboration, and really creating that sense of shared purpose.
It's like building a city, isn't it? You need more than just buildings. You need people who actually want to live there and want to contribute to its growth.
That's a perfect analogy.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. In this deep dive into optimism, we've seen its potential, we've talked about its risks and its place in this rapidly evolving world of blockchain. As we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think I would say approach optimism with informed curiosity.
I like that.
Do your research, understand the technology, be aware of those risks, but also be open to the possibilities. Because optimism is more than just a technology. It's a community of people
Hmm.
who are building a more open and accessible future.
I love that, informed curiosity. And for our listeners, remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. There's a whole world of information out there. Keep learning, keep asking those questions, keep diving deep.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one. Building that next game-changing application on optimism. The future is waiting to be built.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into optimism. We'll catch you next time.